Hello, James Sharma and Albert Vatanian back in room 442 for you. The week that was,
Yes.
and as you look ahead to a good weekend, exhausting week in many ways. There's some really intriguing matches. Champions League back in action, Europa League, a big Premier League encounter, of course, but it was the soccer labour dispute in Canada that once again took the headlines. The women are fighting hard right now, not on the pitch. They were pretty poor yesterday in the loss to the States in the She Believe Cup, but given what's happened off the pitch, that's not a huge surprise, albeit somewhat disappointing. Where do you stand right now with this?
Man, I felt so bad for them watching that yesterday. I just think it's so embarrassing that they have to go out there in purple shirts and protest and have to go in the middle of the pitch with the American team embracing them. And it's like poor old Canada. And I'm not saying it's embarrassing for the women. It's embarrassing on the CSA and the CSB that they have to go out and do this. And now in such an important tournament, they don't have the mental energy, even the physical energy, like Christine Sinclair was saying. They're exhausted because of all this stuff going on behind the scenes because of their federation.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's a very complex issue.
Of course,
right?
yes.
It's really easy to be sympathetic towards the players,
Yes.
and rightly so. It should be equal pay, and that's not even being debated now. Canada Soccer agree, equal pay, yes, they will get equal pay, but it's beyond that, right? It's the resources. And being told that the budgets are being cut this year, so there's fewer camps in a World Cup year. And after the qualifying, after the next World Cup in September, there'll be no more camps for the remainder of 2023. That is embarrassing. They need answers. They need transparency. I will say this, though, for so long we try and hate the Americans because they're the arch rivals of this Canadian team. And then last night they're all arm in arm before the match. It was a great show of solidarity. Women's soccer seems far more together, doesn't it, than men's soccer? Don't you find that?
Absolutely. There's so much more. I don't want to, maybe hatred's the wrong word, but
In context of sport.
there's definitely a much more of a divide, and I think it's because women probably need to be more unified than men to come across to get their point across. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. Well, certainly. I mean, listen, women's soccer is growing, and it hasn't been big for long.
No.
Let's be honest, it's growing
But
now
they've
with
come
WSL.
such a long way in a short time.
Yeah.
This is why it makes this situation so embarrassing because they've put so much work in, them and the men, to get to this point. And it's, I don't know the whole story, obviously, but it's the federation letting them down.
But let me ask you this. Okay, so men and women agree. Let's say you get a deal done, right? And there's equity throughout pay, preparation, equity, support, equity on World Cup years. What about the futsal team? What about the beach soccer team, the para teams? What about them?
Yeah.
They're as important, right? They still wear that Canadian maple leaf.
Of course.
With pride. They sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like every other team.
Yeah, it should be spread out.
It's not that easy.
No, it's not. It's not. It should be it's spread around throughout everybody. I mean, but obviously behind the scenes when it comes to business and these things, it's much more complicated than we probably even will ever know.
Yeah, and that's why it's not happening like that, I think.
Yeah.
We can rip on Canada soccer, and rightly so for many reasons, but it isn't quite as easy as I think a lot of people are making it out.
No.
Hopefully, listen, there's the April camp, which they're threatening to strike on. There's a March window for the men as well, which is a really important window, and they can make a real statement as well.
Yeah.
Don't forget. So we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. Could be interesting. I want to get to the Europa League before the Champions League for this past week. Because
wow.
I know, can you believe it? But Manchester United Barcelona felt like the best match of the weekend, of the week, right? The biggest match, the marquee match, because of their history, but because both teams are also slowly growing and getting back to where they should be. 2-2 in the end, a bit of controversy. Rashford scored another goal, but a good match. It's just what the Europa League needs, isn't it?
Absolutely, and this is not even the knockout stages of
it's a
of
play-in.
Europe. It's a play-in essentially to get into the knockout stages. But what a fantastic game! And now it's all set for an even bigger game in the second leg at Old Trafford. I mean, there's so many storylines. Like heading into this second leg at Old Trafford, Barcelona is not going to have their first choice midfield, right? Pedri went off injured, Gavi suspended, and you're going to have a full, healthy, hopefully after this weekend, Manchester United.
Without Eriksen, though.
Without Eriksen. But I do believe the way that Manchester United played in that second half, if they can carry that over into the second leg, I think they can get through. But yeah, I'm with you. I think this is one of the best matches of the week, but I still have to lean towards City and Arsenal because of what was at stake.
By the way, at the time of taping, there's still no news from England about the Manchester United takeover.
Yeah.
The deadline for bids is today for big interested parties, apparently, with the Qataris, the big favourites right now. That'll be a story, I'm sure, for Room 442 next week. The Champions League did resume this week with the round of 16. Some nice games. Chelsea losing to Dortmund. Chelsea played pretty well, and then of course Bayern Munich beating PSG, and that's the one that really raises the flags, doesn't it?
Yeah, look what happens now with PSG. You always know when the knockouts are upon us, when PSG comes out with controversy and players wanting to leave and players not happy with the dressing room and Mbappe not happy with Neymar going to McDonald's and all this nonsense because they might be bumped out of the Champions League. And I think this is the nail in the coffin for this experiment of Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar if they get bumped out of this stage.
Yeah,
of the
we
Champions
spoke
League.
about it this week on Room 442. Do we think that all three will be back next year?
Right.
I think you, myself, and Mikey Singh all agreed nope.
No, I
There'll
don't
be
know
some
if any,
departures.
maybe none of them.
Maybe.
There's a chance that actually happens.
They're sick of Neymar, apparently, and his huge house parties he's having and embarrassing the club. I mean,
Scapegoat. He's always been that, right?
yeah. But he was having parties. You can't be enjoying yourself if you're a professional
And who
footballer.
knows who's actually pulling the strings at the top of that club?
Well, it's Mbappe, isn't it?
I think so. That's so strange to me.
But it's
So
time-
much
but it's time
power.
that he moved, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
With respect to the French league and PSG, who, quite frankly, was nothing 20 years ago. Like, literally nothing.
Yeah.
It's time to see Mbappe on the bigger stage, be it Spain, Italy, Germany, or obviously England.
Need more coverage of him.
Yeah, you do
Yeah.
need more coverage. And we know what he can do. When he came on that game this week, he looked brilliant, even though he's injured. We saw what the World Cup week can do. We see it week in and week out for PSG and Ligue 1. I want to see him doing it for probably Real Madrid
Yeah.
in the Champions League or every week in La Liga. Please,
I want to see him
'cause
in the Premier League.
bored
I
of
want to
this
see him in the
PSG.
Premier League so much. But let me ask you this: if PSG win the Champions, it's gonna be tough to do it. But if they win the Champions League this season, does that make them an elite team? I don't.
Well, I think they're elite now,
I don't
don't you?
consider them that though.
Don't you? They got to the final before. They got to the
Yeah,
semi-finals
they
before.
have, but yeah. Maybe
What's
just-
elite though? From on the pitch?
I think
or-
you need
or
a
off the
lot,
pitch?
a lot
The
more
financial
history, which is
muscle.
kind of against them. Well, you look at Real, Liverpool,
They're a super
Barcelona.
club. Though. They're
Yeah.
a super club,
super club.
right? I wouldn't put Liverpool in the super club category just because they haven't got the money to be a super club.
Right.
They've got the history, of course. Yeah, I for me, they're elite. But I know what you're saying.
Did you hear Tony Cruz's comments about the Super League today?
No.
He goes, he's essentially not really against it. He goes, he's mentioning Manchester City and Real Madrid. Who would want to see that every single week? And he goes, well, we used to see Roger Federer against Nadal every week. Who got tired of that?
Yeah,
I was like,
that's
oh,
true.
Tony Cruz?
Sellout. What a sellout. He's got to be careful. He can upset his fans pretty quickly, right?
I think he's got one foot out the door, like career-wise.
But Nadal and Federer, it's a bad comparison, though.
I get what
Because
he's-
to get
I
to
get
that
what he's
final,
saying.
They still have to play the lesser lights.
That's true. Yeah, I
Right?
totally get what he's saying. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the Super League. I don't want it to happen, but if it happens, I think we'll probably end up liking it.
Yeah, maybe.
I think so.
Probably. I mean, listen, from a sporting spectacle, it's incredible,
Yeah,
right? But to me, I like seeing Real Madrid against
Me too.
Getafe. Man City against Nottingham. I like to see that, right? And you have the Champions League, which to me, UEFA, okay, we can criticize them for a million reasons, but it works pretty well. I like it.
it's
And the fact that
special every
not
time it's
week
on.
is
Yeah,
what's important.
yeah. I
Right.
think that's the thing about the Champions League. It feels like a big match every time it's on. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? That
it does.
They own
Well,
that
that's just the
Tuesday and Wednesday.
anthem.
They own the Tuesday and Wednesday. And if you're going to bring in another competition or a Super League, it's going to take some time to really feel that because there's so much history and tradition with the
Yeah.
Champions League.
Besides, we don't actually see Djokovic and Nadal or Federer every week,
No, that's true.
right? We don't.
Tony Cruz. I love Tony Cruz. Now I don't know.
Yeah, hate him, right? Yeah. Very quickly, City beat Arsenal to go
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
tops in the Premier League. We did Fast Money Football. Check that out, of course, on all our platforms. Is it fait accompli? Is City now going to win the Premier League? Was it a nice little run for Arsenal there, but the bump has happened?
That's what everyone seems to think. I don't think it's. I think it's far from over. I think Arsenal are very much in it. They need to figure it out because they're slumping at the wrong time. And the big issue, and we always talk about the most important player on Arsenal, and I've said it before, Martin Odegaard. I'm beginning to think it's Thomas Partey.
Partey, yeah.
He holds that midfield together. When he's not there, they just don't play the same.
Well, they didn't midweek, did they?
No.
That midfield
Whenever I
wasn't
think
very
it's
good.
whenever he hasn't played or he's been subbed when Arsenal were losing, they've lost all those matches.
Right.
That's a key player.
Thomas Partey.
But how about that? For midweek football, you had two teams in the title race facing off on a Champions League Wednesday, and that Premier League match was more important than those other two Champions
It's
League games.
because the Premier League is the Super League.
That tells you a lot. Yeah, I know.
In many ways it is.
At least at the top of the table.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, respect to Southampton and
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a lower table team right now.
Yeah, why am I blanking too?
Everton.
Bournemouth.
Bournemouth, there you go.
Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Poor Everton.
Obviously, the Toffees now.
I know.
All right, that was the week. That was.